Hi everybody, welcome to our live event. My name is Brenda KB Anderson, and today I am going to be showing you guys how to work up the cables in this really beautiful beanie. This is called the Donegal Beanie, and this is in celebration of St. Patrick's Day and Ireland, which I love so much, and I look forward to this class. I am so glad that you guys are here. I see that there is already some Gaelic in the comments section, and I don't read Gaelic, I'm sorry. I wonder if it says looking forward to the broadcast. Possibly, but Anne, if you want to translate that for me, I would be excited to know what that means. I actually have a friend who teaches Gaelic, and too bad he's not here because he could be letting me know what's going on. But I'm so glad you guys are here. So, of course, this is a live event, so if there are things that I'm doing that aren't making sense or you need like another further explanation, have any questions about anything, if you just have like comments or other tips for people who, especially pertaining to this project or anything else knitting, you could drop those in the comments. I'm excited to hear from you guys. We've got some oh, hello from Janet. Hi, Janet. I'm glad you're back. Let's see. Oh, okay, don't understand. Row 47 is 23, but row 46 has 21. Oh, it looks like there might be an error in the pattern. Let me check. Let's see. I'm going to look at my chart because that's the easiest way for me to tell. Row 47 has 23 stitches. Let me just look here. 47, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Okay. Oh, okay. So row 47 should have 21 times 4. Let's see, 84. So I'm not sure what the 23 stitches, maybe you just mean in the chart? Okay, we'll get to that as we work through. Row 46 has 20, oh, okay, I see. Okay, we will work through that as we go through the pattern. I will address that later. If there is a correction to be made, I will make that later today, or I will try to make that later today, and it should be up on the website soon. But I can tell you for sure that the stitches that you see in the chart, those are going to be the correct stitch count for sure. Okay, so we'll be going through that. I think I need a little more time to just try to figure out what it is that you mean by that, Mary. So, okay. We've got a bunch of hellos coming in from Norfolk, UK. Hi, Nikki, and Jenny from Texas, and Binta from Ohio. Hi, you guys. And Sharon from Omaha, and Amy from Indiana. Long-time knitter, first-time viewer. Well, welcome, Amy. I'm glad you found us. All right. Okay, so this project, of course, was inspired by Ireland and St. Patrick's Day, and I did have the good fortune of going to Ireland quite a number of years ago now. But I just had such a great experience, and with this project and the Brigid cowl, which is what I'm wearing, I did a live event on this 2 days ago. I really wanted to like find that feeling of when I was in Ireland and have that come out through my projects. So I tried really hard to really get that feeling, and part of that is the wool that this is made with. I actually did order this from Ireland. There's a link in the pattern in case you want to find exactly what I used. But yeah, part of this is just ordering the wool that actually was from a mill in Donegal, which is why this is called the Donegal Beanie. All right, so let's start by talking about what you're going to need for this project. So first of all, you're going to need to download your pattern if you haven't done that already. You can always come back and download it later. It's always going to be there. So if you don't get to it right now, if you just want to watch the live, you can always get to it later. But this is really going to be essential for making this beanie because I am not going to be able to show you every single row or round in this beanie today because I just don't have time. There's too many different things going on throughout the pattern. What I'm going to do instead, although that is normally how I like to teach my tutorials, I like to really show you every single step. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to kind of quickly go through the ribbing, and then once we get into the cabling, I am going to make sure that I show you each different type of cable, the way that we twist the stitches for every single section in this hat. So you'll know how to make all of the cables. It's just, here, let me just pull out the download here. So this is the chart of the stitch pattern. If you are not a chart reader and you just like to read, read it written out, I do have those instructions in here as well. So you can do that instead. You don't need to use this chart, but it is very, very helpful to have, especially for a visual learner like myself. So as you're working your way, you can kind of see the pattern. You can see what it kind of looks like here already, right? Like you see these diamonds. Let me pull this in here. That's what this looks like. So it really helps you kind of stay on track to know where you're at. Yes, so we're gonna be working through here, and you can see that there's all these different colored little symbols. So those are where we're crossing stitches over. Those are the cables, and the different colors are showing you the different styles of, like how things cross. Now I'm going to pull the key in. There is a key for this chart, so you don't have to just look at this and wonder what it's all about. This chart has a key. All the symbols are listed, as well as what it means, and then the directions for writing that cable. So you can, as you're working through the chart, once you get to if you're working across, you get to this one that's yellow and really wide, you can look it up and you can know what it's called, and then you can read the directions on how to do it. I'm going to be showing you all of these in the context of where they're at in your in the pattern as it unfolds, but I'm not going to be going through line by line every single line, and how many knits and how many purls and all that for every single line. So we're just not able to fit that in, but that's okay. Oh, it looks like we've got more people saying hello. We've got Ruth. Oh, a descendant from County Kerry. Excellent. We've got some Irish descendants here. Belle says, hi Brenda, Belle's here attending your class from Massachusetts again. Hi Belle, I remember you. Thank you for coming back. And Lul says hello. Ann says hello from North Texas. And Kathy from South Carolina. Oh, okay, Mary says, I think the error is in the written instructions. I'll use the chart instead. Okay, Mary, I will take a look at that after I get home today, and then if there is a correction that needs to be made, we will make that and get that updated. But for sure, if you're able to use a chart, the chart will be right. Yeah. Okay. Oh, Mo Garvey is saying, I'm actually from Donegal, so delighted to be making this hat. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I'm so glad that you're here. How cool. The internet is an amazing place, you guys, where we can meet up from all over the place. So the yarn that I'm using, as I mentioned before, I ordered that from Ireland, and the way that I found this yarn was I actually found a class. There's actually, I think, 4 classes on Craftsy by Carol Feller, who is an Irish knitter and designer, and she's got some very, very interesting classes on Craftsy. One of them is Celtic cables. You guys should check it out. It's just, the things she's making are just absolutely gorgeous. But I found those classes, and I ordered her book. She's got this book called Contemporary Irish Knits. And in the book, she talks about, and she features the different mills in Ireland that are still making yarn. So, like for hand knitters, that type of yarn. So that is actually how I found the mill that I ordered the yarn from. So I just kind of wanted to explain all that, why this book is sitting here. It's a wonderful book. There's really beautiful things in it, and her classes, I mean, she just has such a great aesthetic. Anyway, I'm very excited to be using this yarn. For some of the samples, actually most of the samples I'm going to be working with today, I am not actually using the yarn. Here, let me pull the yarn in. So this is the yarn that I used in the beanie. You only need 1 skein of it, so that's 1 hank of it, and that's great. There's lots of different colors. It's wonderful. But today I'm going to be doing most of my samples in just an acrylic gray worsted weight yarn that's about the same thickness as this. It's going to look slightly different, but I did that just so that you guys could see the stitches just a little bit better. I was worried with the flex and then the colors here that you wouldn't be able to see what I was doing well enough if I used this yarn too much. So anyway, I just wanted to explain that. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the yarn, so you're just going to need 1 skein, or if you are substituting with a different type of yarn, you're going to look for a worsted weight yarn, slightly on the heavier side. I mean, it could be an Aran weight, slightly heavy worsted weight yarn, and this is a merino wool, so if you want something that looks similar, choose a wool or a merino wool. And this is not a superwash, but you could certainly substitute with that if you like. You can also substitute with acrylic or alpaca. They'll have like a little bit of a different quality of the fabric, but that's completely fine. So if you are substituting, you only need 180 yards, just so you'll have a little bit of leftover, about this much is left over after making the hat if you use the yarn I chose. And then you're going to need 2 different circular needles and also double point needles. The smaller of the 2 circular needles is a 16-inch circular needle, US size 4, 3.5 millimeter. So that's just for the ribbing. And then as we move along and get up to the cabling section, we're going to move up to a size 6, which is a 4 millimeter needle, also a 16-inch circular needle as well. And later on, when we're closing the crown of the hat, the top of the hat, eventually that circular needle is going to be too long and annoying, and you're going to have to switch over to double point needles, or you can do, the, what is it called, magic loop? No. Where you, for some reason I can't remember, but where you pull the cable part out from your circular needle. You can use that method, or you can use 2 circular needles. I like to do that sometimes too. So the double point needles I used are also, the size 6 for 4 millimeter needles. Same size as the size you need for the cabling. Let's see, and then you'll need a cable needle. So I more recently came across these cable needles that have like this almost like a W shape here, that little bump. And I had seen them before, but I'd never used one. I didn't really understand what the point of that was. And I'm not quite sure if this has a special purpose, but I love using this because when I slip the stitches onto my cable needle, that little bump seems to keep the cable needle from falling off. So I love this. I just wanted to point that out. But you can use whatever kind of cable needle that you have. That should be just fine. And then I use a stitch marker just to mark the beginning of my rounds in case I'm not paying attention to my yarn tail from the very beginning where we cast on, and a yarn needle to close things up at the end. That's it. All right, so let's get started talking about the construction of our beanie. Let me just pull out the chart here. Okay, so you're going to start by casting on 108 stitches. Oh, I should mention there's only one size for this beanie. And normally I don't do that. Normally I like to size things at least, 4 sizes or so. But because of the wide cable repeat, it made it really difficult for me to size this. But the cool thing is it's so stretchy. It stretched way more than I thought. So it fit my elementary school kids, also myself, and also my husband, who has a 24-inch head. It fit all of us. And it wasn't even like, when you wear a hat that's a little too small and it wants to kind of just move up and up and up. It was not like that on my husband's head. It actually stayed on, and I think it's because the beanie is just a little bit longer, so that kind of helps. And it was able to stretch, and it looked really good. So this should fit just about anybody with the, teen, or even, my elementary school kids, it fit them just great. All the way up to a 24-inch head. Okay, so back to this. You're going to cast on 108 stitches, and just be careful you're not twisting your stitches. And if you need more help on this, I know that there's videos on this. Lots of projects start out like this, where you cast on a bunch to a circular needle. You just have to look for that little ridge. Just make sure it's not twisted all the way around, or you're going to have a problem later. And then you can just start knitting. So in round number 1, okay, so I have my my tail is on the needle on my right, and I'm just going to start knitting just like this. And I also should mention that I did a German twisted cast on for this because that's kind of my go-to. I like that one because it's stretchy, it's easy, it's automatic for me. But you can use whatever cast on you like as long as it's, cast on loosely enough that it can stretch. All right, so we're going to start by making a knit in the very first stitch. And then we're going to do a purl 1 and then knit 2. And we're going to repeat the purl 1, knit 2 almost all the way to the end. Okay, so purl 1, knit 2, 1 and 2, and you're just going to work in this ribbed pattern all the way around, and you're going to end up with one more, like one knit at the very end. So you're going to do knit purl, what am I saying? Knit 2, purl 1, and then the very last stitch will be a knit 1, okay? And the reason that we start with just knitting 1 is because, let me just pull this in here, because we're making 4 repeats of this cable, and the stitch pattern starts, see how there's 2 knits right here? Starts in the middle of those 2, so just 1 knit and then 1 knit over here. So like between my fingers, that is the stitch pattern, and you'll see that in the chart, in the directions, but that's why we start with a knit 1 in the ribbing here, knit 1, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 2, purl 1, all the way around, and then you end with just that 1 knit 1 at the very end to complete it. Okay, so you're going to do that for 10 rounds, and then you're going to, your piece will look something like this. And then we're going to start working the cabling pattern. So this would be round 11. And I'm going to pull out my chart here because that's going to make it easier for me to keep track of. So number 11. So we're going to start with a knit 1. Oh, I should mention, in the chart, of course, we have the key to the chart. And I'm going to be talking you through these stitches and pointing them out, but if you forget what these symbols are, just make sure you're looking at the key, and that's on the next page of the download. Okay, so we've got that long line, that means a knit from the right side, and in this pattern, we're only working from the right side the whole time because we're just working around and around and around. So knit 1, purl 1, and then we get to this purple one, which is a 2x2 left cable. And that's where I'm going to stop. I'll show you that first. So we've got a knit 1. Oops, I got to switch to my larger needle here. Forgot that. This is actually a size 8. This is a little bit too big. I just didn't have an extra size 6 because it's being used in one of my samples here. So just in case you see the sizing, I don't want you to be tricked. All right, so we've got a knit 1, and then a purl 1. And then we are already at this little cable section here. So we're going to put 2 stitches, the next 2 stitches, we're slipping them purlwise onto a cable needle like this, and we're going to pull that off, and we're going to hold that in front. Then we're going to knit the next 2 stitches. So 1, 2. Then we're going to knit off of our cable needle. And so for many people, they just pick up their cable needle and they knit straight off their cable needle. I find this to be more awkward myself than to just pop those stitches back onto my left-hand needle, so that's normally how I do things, but it just kind of depends on the cable pattern, but I'll show you that next in our next cable. And then we've got 5 purls right here. So we're going to do 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here we are at that long yellow cable. So I should also mention too, I want to point this out. These are all color coded, but I do want to point out specifically that there are purple cables here, and they are not the same, okay? They're very similar, but this one is worked over 4 stitches, and this one up here is worked over only 3. So you do need to look at the color, but you also need to look at how many stitches it's worked across. And so the easy way to look at that is if you just look above it, there's these knit stitches. You can count them, 1, 2, 3, 4. You can tell this is a cable that uses four of your loops, 4 of your stitches. This one only has 3, 1, 2, 3. I just want to make sure that I point that out because I don't want you to think that, oh, it's purple. It has to be this one. This is only with 3 stitches. This one down here is 4. So you can see there's a difference. The reason that they're both purple is because they're made in a very similar way, and I'll kind of get into that as I'm making these cables. Another thing to think about is I chose the color coding. I wanted the cooler stitches, so the purples and the blues, those are the stitches in the cable where you put your stitches on your cable needle and you hold them to the front. The reds and the oranges, you will put your stitches on your cable needle and hold the stitch to the back, okay? Stitch or stitches to the back, okay? So that can be like another way of helping you read this chart when you're kind of looking through. You can also see which way the lines go, and that's going to show you really what your cable is going to be looking like. It's going to twist in the same way. So back here, I mean, it'll be easier to see later when you work a little further, but you can see that there are lines going in this direction here. You can see the lines going in this direction also in what we just knit up, okay? So it should look the same as, you know, it should kind of appear similar to how the symbol in the chart looks, okay? All right, so back to this. So we just did our 5 purls. Now we're at this big long yellow cable. This one is worked over 5 stitches. So we're going to pull the next 3 stitches onto our cable needle. So 1, 2, 3. And we are going to hold this to the back. I know yellow is really, to me, neither warm nor cool exactly, but we're going to hold those to the back. It's a little bit warmer than cool, though, in my mind anyway. And then we're going to knit the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, just like that. And then we're going to knit off of our cable needle. So I'm going to slip those 3 stitches back onto my left-hand needle because that's easier for me, because then I can really kind of pull them away from each other, and we're going to knit those 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. So if you're able to just easily knit off your cable needle, that is the fastest way to go. I just find that I fumble around too much and it annoys me, so I usually slip it to my cable needle. Slip it back to my left-hand needle. All right, so we're going to do 5 purls here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Oh, I should mention that yellow cable is called a 2x3 right cross. So one thing that I noticed when I started working with cables, I didn't really understand the order of these numbers here, but what it's saying is the first number is how many stitches sit on top of what's behind it, if that makes sense. So we just did a 2x2 left cable, so that means 2 stitches sit on top of 2 stitches, and it's a left-leaning cable, meaning it looks like it's slanting towards the left. This one that we just worked just now is a 2x3, 2 over 3. So that would be like 2 stitches, wait, hold on, I get my fingers right here. So 2 stitches over 3 stitches. And it is a right-leaning cable, meaning it's kind of going to the right. I hope that this is helping to see my fingers. If that doesn't make sense, then let me know. But it just really helped me figure out what I'm supposed to be doing to understand what's going on with that numbering system there. Okay, so we've got our 5 purls, and now we are over here in the chart. We're about to work this 4-stitched right-leaning cable. So that's a 2x2 right cable right here in the chart. So we're going to slip the first 2 stitches onto the needle and hold them to the back. Remember how I said the warm, or the red and the orange and the yellow, those are all something we're going to hold to the back. So when we're slipping to the back, I like to pull my needle behind my work. I'm a continental knitter, so I always hold my yarn with my left hand here. So I like to duck my needle to the back here first before I slip my stitches. It just seems to help. So I've got those 2 stitches. I'm going to hold them on my cable needle. They're just going to sit there on the back of my work while I ignore them. And then I'm going to knit the next 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And then I'm going to knit the 2 needles, knit the 2 stitches from my cable needle. I just lost a stitch there. Pop that back on. All right, so now I'm going to place these back on my cable, or on my left-hand needle. There we go. And we're going to go ahead and knit those 2. And you'll be able to see that our cable is leaning to the right. So it looks like the picture there. Okay, so it's a good idea to check it after you do it, just to make sure. All right, and then the next stitch is a purl. And the last stitch in the chart is a knit. Just like that. Okay, so then you would repeat this whole section that we did from the very beginning of this round. You repeat that 3 more times around, okay, because we're going to have four cable panels around our hat. So let me fold it this way. So you've got 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 on the back. All right, so you would go ahead and do that. And then on the next round, you would be working basically knitting the knits and purling the purls, okay? So you can see there's knits all above those. Those were all knit stitches. Even though we did them out of order, we were still knitting them. So we have knits over our knits and purls over our purls. So you're just going to be knitting the knits and purling the purls. So that leads us up to round number 13. And here I'm going to be switching to just a little section of the hat, okay? So this is just like a little swatch, but I'm going to be showing you the cable as I go. Oops, I got to grab an extra needle here. Oops. Let me just check in here. Oh, I'm a little behind in my comments here. Okay, we've got hello from Bonita and a hello from Canada. Is it a Brenda creation? Janet, oh, love your sweater. Oh, thank you. Yes, my sweater is something I designed, and it is, it's going to be a Craftsy class coming up. It's called the Felicity Raglan, so it's a crocheted sweater. Patricia is saying, yes, magic loop is correct. Excellent. You know, I mostly teach crochet. I mean, I knit a lot too, but I'm mostly teaching crochet. And magic loop means a completely different thing in crochet. And so when I said magic loop, I'm like, am I just saying a crochet term? That's why I was having that little moment there. Let's see. Oh, Joyce, you can always watch things afterwards. Yep. And Colleen Taki is here. She just did a really awesome live event yesterday. Working on I can't remember the name of it, but a quilted project with some shamrocks on it. All right. Oh yeah, I need to learn chart patterns. I learned years ago before charts became a thing. Yeah, the charts are so helpful for me. I don't know where I would be without the charts. Would be in trouble, that is for sure. Granny is saying you can put clothespins on your circular needle to help keep your work from twisting on the first couple of rounds. Oh, interesting, just to give it a little weight and keep it hanging down. Oh, that's a good idea. Okay, all right. And we have a hello from Denmark. Hello, Janie, or Janie. I'm not sure how you say your name. I'm sorry if I butchered it, but hello. Okay, so in this next sample here, I'm going to be showing you round number 13. So in this sample, I am just basically showing you this repeat, but plus I added 2 stitches, 2 at the beginning and 2 at the end, just so that you could see the repeat a little bit better so the edges weren't curling and being all weird. So I'm going to go ahead and just do those 2 stitches that are not included. This is not something you're going to be doing. There we go. So now here we are at the beginning of our repeat. So round number 13, we've got a knit, and then a purl. And then we've got 4 knits, and those 4 knits are right above where we're doing that cable, where we did that first cable twist. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we've got 5 purls. So 1, 2, 3. Let's see. Oh, sorry, only 4 purls. Okay, I was wondering if I had made a mistake there. Okay, so we've got 4 purls. We're right here. And now we have a little red cable, and this is worked over only 3 stitches. So it's a little different than the one we already did, but it's quite similar, you'll see. So right here, it is a 2x1 right cable. Okay, so we're gonna slip just the next stitch. Remember, it's red, so we're gonna put that, what we're slipping onto our cable needle, we're gonna put that in the back. So we're going to slip just 1 stitch onto our cable needle and hold it behind our work. And then we're going to knit the next 2 stitches, 1, 2. And then we're going to place that, you can just go ahead and knit off your cable needle. I'm just going to put it back on my left-hand needle. And we're going to knit that stitch. Okay? So we've got that right 2x1 right cable, which is right here. And then the next stitch is a purl. There we go. And then the next group is a left-leaning cable, a 2x1 left-leaning cable. So we're going to pull the next 2 stitches this time off of our left needle, and we're going to hang that to the front because it's a cool color. This, by the way, this cool color, warm color thing, that's just, I mean, maybe other designers do that, I'm not sure. But that's me just making that up. I just made it up to make it easier for myself, honestly, and I thought, well, hopefully that'll be easier for you guys too. Okay, so we're going to knit the next stitch, and then we're going to knit these 2 stitches from our cable needle, or if you're me, you just pop that onto your left-hand needle and go ahead and knit those 2 stitches. Okay? So you can kind of see what's happening here. We're sort of pulling that ridge of knit stitches away from each other. So we're creating the bottom of that sort of diamond shape. We're just going to keep moving them over by 1 stitch every time we're making those cable crossings right there. Because you can see there's one that we just did, like a pair, and there's 2 more sets just above. So we're just going to continue doing that on the next, number of rounds. Okay, so now here we are. So we're going to do 4 purls. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're just above those 4 stitches where we did our cable crossing from the last, like 2 rows ago, I should say. So we're going to knit all 4 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoops. And then we'll purl, and then we'll knit 2. 1, 2. And then, we're just knitting 1. The last one was not in our repeat. Okay, so we start with that knit 1. We're going to end with a knit 1. And then I had tacked on those 2 extra stitches just to make my swatch look a little better, so you could see the cable, or you could see the stitches a little bit better. The whole full repeat better, I should say. All right, so that is row number 13. And you can see just by looking at the chart, or if you look in the instructions, you'll see that the beginning of, so the next, I should say, let me not skip over the next row. The next row, again, we're just knitting the knits and purling the purls here, okay? So we're just doing knits and purls. You can see in this chart, only every other row are we doing something fancy with moving our stitches around, okay? The rows in between, we're just knitting and purling. That's all we're doing. Okay, so it's just only every other one that you really have to kind of pay a little more attention to what you're doing. But so after we've worked round number 13, which is what I just showed you the repeat for, then the next one, we're knitting the knits and purling the purls. The following round, you can see the beginning cable crossing is just like what we started out with here in round number 11. It's exactly the same. And in fact, if you look all the way up this column, it's just going to be the same almost all the way up until we're really close to the very end. That one's a little bit different because that's only over 3 stitches because we've already gone through and done lots of decreases. So you're just going to kind of keep that in your mind that you're starting out with a very similar pattern all the way up in that column. Let me just bring that in here. What you're making is this section right here. You can see that it just repeats. Okay, so every 4th round, you're doing the cross, or you're crossing your stitches over each other, okay? And you can see the same thing is happening over here, it's just in the opposite direction. So every 4th round, you're doing a cabling stitch here, and it's just the same all the way up. It's the column. And every time, you're always doing knit stitches in between in that whole column of 4 stitches, if that makes sense. So you already kind of know all of this whole section. You already know how to do these cables and this cable as well. So you would just continue. Now you can see when you look in the middle of this diamond here, or if you read the instructions, you'll see that we start out with just a purl in between those 2 cables at the center. Then above it, we've got a purl above the purl. When you're working those rounds where you're not doing your cable crossing, you're going to be knitting the knits and purling the purls. Then the following round, here we start out with that same cable. This time we're working 3 purls. Then we do that 2x1 right-leaning cable here. And then we're going to purl, knit, purl, and then we're going to do a 2x1 left-leaning cable right here. If you look at the inside of this diamond, You're going to be working in, this is called the Irish moss stitch. Also, some people call it the American moss stitch. It's different than the English moss stitch because you do 2 rounds in a row that have the same stitches. So you see there's knits above each other and purls above each other and knits above each other. So just make a note of that. Once you get to the inside of that diamond, you should be working in that Irish moss stitch. I mean, you don't have to remember that really, because if you read the instructions or if you're following the chart, it'll just make you do that. That's fine. I'm just pointing these things out because I know for me, when I'm working something that's a little bit more complicated and there's stitches going different ways and things are changing, it just helps me to know certain areas are what they're supposed to look like. So that's why I'm pointing this out. So you can see that Irish moss stitch right in the middle of that little diamond there, the little stitch pattern. Okay, so you already know how to do this whole section. So we're going to get all the way up to round number 21, and I'm going to show you these cables because this is a different type of cable here, those two. Alrighty, so this is round number 21. Again, I'm just working a little swatch, just a 1 repeat of the cable pattern here. And I started it out with like a little frame of 2 stitches on either side of the actual repeat. So I'm working those now. And now we're ready for working across the repeat. So we're gonna do a knit and a purl and then 4 knits. So you can see this is always starting out pretty much the same every single round. So we've got a knit and a purl and 4 knits. 1, 2, 3, 4. So here we are right here. We're going to do 2 purls. So 1 and 2. And now we are ready to do this as a 2/1 left purl cable. So let's see, let me find. That's right here, 2/1 left purl cable on your chart, or on your key, I should say. So because it's blue, we're taking the stitches off, putting them on our cable needle, and we're going to hang them to the front of our work while we work the next stitch. So the thing that makes this different from the previous 2/1 left cable, which is right down here, the thing that makes it different is this little tiny dot right there. It's telling you there's going to be a purl stitch right there, okay? So instead, we were doing all knits last time. This time we're doing a purl. So we're going to purl the next stitch, which is right here. And then we're going to knit the next 2 stitches off of our cable needle. So I'm just slipping them back over, and I'm going to knit those 2 stitches. 1 and 2. And so if you look at what we just did, we're kind of bringing this column of stitches, or this, I don't know, like raised section, we're going to start bringing it back over in this direction to make the top of that sort of diamond shape. And when we moved that other stitch over, we made it with a purl, so we're just sort of adding more to this background, because this is like reverse stockinette over here, all these purl stitches. So that should help you remember, oh yeah, that needs to be a purl because I'm moving it to the outside of this right here, so it needs to be a purl stitch. Okay, so then we're going to do purl, knit, purl. So this is the Irish moss section here. So we're going to do a purl, knit, purl, and before I finish this, I want to point out on the rows where you're doing a cable crossing, if it's a cable crossing row, like we just created that cable there. When you're working the moss stitch in the center, that's when you switch up the stitch pattern. So where are we here? Okay, right here. You can see just below, we're doing a purl, knit, purl, but just below that, we had a knit stitch. So right below the purl is a knit. So we're doing the opposite. So if there was a knit, you make a purl. If there was a purl, you make a knit, okay? So this is just more information to kind of help you realize, be able to do this without having to, I guess just to kind of lower the chances of making mistakes in cables. Just giving you more tips. Okay, So now we have a purl left, or this one stitch left right before that kind of column of stitches. We are right here in our chart. This is orange, so that's going to tell us we're going to take our stitches and bring them to the back. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one stitch off, just one stitch, and hold it to the back of our work. And now we have those two knit stitches right there. We're going to knit those two, 1 and 2. And then we're going to purl the stitch that was on our cable. So I'm slipping that back over to the left, and I'm going to purl that stitch, because just like on the other side, we're bringing that stitch over, and it's going to work up this reverse stockinette background here. So that's got to be a purl stitch. And we're going to do 2 more purls, 1 and 2. And then 4 knits, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a purl, and a knit. Okay, and then these 2 last stitches were just stitches I added for my swatch. Okay, so you can see this is pulling back in now because we moved our stitches over. Okay, so we created that the diamond to be coming back in, because we're taking stitches from the inside and moving it to the outside, which is making it kind of bend in, if that makes sense. All right. Oh, Janice says I've always called that double moss stitch, but prefer the description of the iris moss stitch. Oh yes, it is also called double moss stitch. It has a lot of, knitting and crochet have so many things that are called the same thing, or sometimes they're 2 totally different things and they're called the same thing, and that is what is very confusing. But yes, that is also the double moss, yes. I had forgotten that. Thank you for bringing that up, because there's probably a lot of people who know it as the double moss. Okay, so then on your following row, you would be working, knits in the knits and purls in the purls, and you can see here, there is a purl directly above this cable, but that's because this was a purl right here, okay? So, and then knit, knit, and then we do purl, knit, purl. And then above the same thing, we're knitting the knits and purling the purls, okay? So that is round number 22. Then we get to round number 23, and you recognize these. These are our friends that we learned right at the very beginning. We already know how to do these 2x2. This is a 2x2 left-leaning cable. We've got a 2x2 right-leaning cable. We have these exact same cables that we just learned how to do down here. They're just moved over slightly, so we do 3 purls before we start doing that instead of just the 2 purls down here, okay? That means that we have fewer stitches on the inside of our diamond because we're bringing those edges closer together. And then again, on the next round, we knit the knits and purl the purls across. Then on the following round, we've got those same 2 cabling stitches coming even closer together. We don't have any more cabling out here because remember we have to do these every 4 rounds. And then you can see, here we are. This looks familiar, right? This round right here, round number 27, is exactly the same as round number 11. That was the very first cabling round that I was showing you. So we're going to repeat that. That whole section is the same. Everything we worked here is the same up until we get to round number 39 right here. And you can see, this is one of those things about charts that we get a lot of questions about, like what is going on? What do we do with these gray stitches? And the answer is you don't do anything with them. You just ignore them and move on to the next stitch. And I know that doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense when you're newer at reading charts, but I'm going to show you as I work through this what that means. Okay, so this sample right here, this is the cable pattern worked up until we get to round number 39. So that's right here. Again, we're going to start out with our knit, purl, and then that cable crossing. So we have a knit, and we have a purl, and then we have, this is the yarn, this is the Studio Donegal yarn, that the yarn from Ireland here that I'm showing you. So I'm going to take off the next 2 stitches, hold them to the front. We learned this in the very first row here. This is the same exact thing. We're working that up here in round number 39, that 2x2 left leaning cable. So we're going to knit the next 2 stitches, 1 and 2, and then we can knit the 2 stitches off of our cable needle, or I like to slide them over to my left-hand needle and knit those 2, 1 and 2. And then we're going to purl 1. And then here we are at this funny little symbol here. So this has, just in case this is too small for you guys to see, I'm going to draw it a little bit bigger here so you guys can see the symbol. This is like so here's the box, and there's like a slash running through, and then a little dot. Okay, so in my pattern, this is a purl 2 together. Again, this is in your key right here. It'll tell you purl 2 together. So we're going to do that. So that just means, you know, we place our needle through the next 2 stitches and purl them as if they were 1 stitch, okay? Just like that. And then you can see by looking at our chart, there's that little gray confusing stitch. All that means is, hey, we've already used up this stitch, you know, but we had to sort of account for that somewhere in this chart because the chart is a grid. And it's not a 3-dimensional shaped thing where we can kind of bring the pieces together. So this little gray block is just saying, skip over me, pretend I'm not even there, and then you move on right to this next stitch right here, which we just learned recently, which was the 2x1 left purl cable. So that we take the next 2 stitches off our needle, hang them to the front. Then we're going to make a purl stitch, and we're going to knit the next 2 stitches off of the cable needle, or slide them to the left-handed needle and knit those 2 stitches. And then here we are at the little section, the double moss, Irish moss, American moss, mossy section. We're going to purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, and then we're going to do the 2x1 right purl cable. So that's right here. So we're going to take the next stitch off, just 1 stitch. We're going to hold it to the back. Then we're going to knit 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to place that stitch from the cable needle back on the left-hand needle, or you can just go ahead and make a purl stitch on, right off that cable needle. There's our purl, and we're going to purl 3 more stitches. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now, let's see. Oh, I think I did 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, I'm already up. Yeah, I just was pointing to this one, but we're really up here. Okay, let me back that up. Sorry, I made a mistake. I was looking at round number 37 about halfway through this round. It's very similar, but we're really doing round number 39. So let me back up because those purls, we have to address those purls. Okay, so everything was correct until right after I knit those 2 stitches. So the purl cross that we did was fine. Everything there was fine. It's just that I missed this little guy here. So again, this is another one of these symbols. So it's a purl 2 together right after you do the 2x1 right purl cable. Okay, so right after you do that, you're going to purl 2 together. Okay, so this was the purl from the That's the purl from the cable. And now we're going to purl the next 2 stitches together as if they were 1 stitch. And then we have just 1 purl left right here before we get to this little cable section right here. And so that little cable section, just for a little bit of review, because we already learned how to do this one, we're going to take the next 2 stitches off, put them on a cable needle, and hang them to the back of our work. And we're going to knit the next 2 stitches. And we will knit those 2 stitches off our cable needle or slide them over and knit them. Anytime, if you guys are going to be doing this sliding things over like I do, just make sure that you don't let your needle flip around, that you're always sliding things on and off as if you're purling a stitch, if that makes sense. So you're not going in this way, you're going through this way when you move it across from needle to needle. Okay. And then we finish up that round of that repeat by doing a purl and a knit. And then we would repeat that for 3 more times around our hat. So we just have started doing these decreases just to the outside of our cable. That's going to start shaping the crown of our hat, just going to start bringing it in. And then you can see if we look at our chart, or if you read the instructions, you'll see on the next round, which is right here, you're just knitting the knits and purling the purls all the way across. And again, this gray box, don't just pay no attention to that. Just go purl, purl, and then your next stitch is a purl. You're not skipping a stitch. You're not doing anything fancy. You're just moving on. You're just kind of ignoring those gray boxes as you get to them. Then the next round, you're knitting the knits and purling the purls up until you get to these 2 cables, which you guys already know how to do. The next round, knitting the knits and purling the purls across, and then once again here in round number 43, you're going to be doing those purl 2 togethers. There's one here, and then there's one here. Okay, but otherwise this should all look very familiar. We've done all these stitches before. Knitting the knits and purling the purls on the next round, and then here we are at round number 45, and we see a new symbol here. This is a knit 2 together. So it's just like this right there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get to that point. So we've got, I worked up my swatch here until we're ready to work on row number 45. And again, with this swatch, I added those 2 extra stitches at the end. So I'm just going to go ahead and do those. Pay no attention to these 2 stitches. All right, and now we're ready to work that repeat. Okay, so this is round number 45. We're doing the first repeat here. So we're going to start with a knit and a purl, and we're going to knit across the next 2 stitches. So 1 and 2, and here we are in the chart. Okay, so we knit, knit, and now here's that knit 2 together. So to knit 2 together, you're just going to pretend they're one stitch. You could just move them right next to each other, slide your needle through, and knit them together as though they were one, just like that. So now we only have 3 stitches there in that column. So we are already starting to kind of change things up a little bit. This has been basically a constant all the way through up until this point. Now we only have 3 stitches there. All right, and then we're going to do a purl, another purl, and then we've got a 2 over 1 right purl cable. So we're going to bring that next stitch, hold it, sorry, it's not a purl cable, a right, just a 2 by 1 right cable. Sorry, it's not a purl. I don't know why I said that. So we're going to bring that 1 stitch, hold it to the back, and then we're going to knit the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then we're going to go ahead and knit the stitch that's on the cable needle. All right, and then the next stitch is a purl. And here we are in our chart. We're going to do a 2 by 1 left leaning cable here. So it's purple, it's a cool color, so we're going to let that hang out to the front. We're going to bring those 2 stitches, let them hang out to the front, and then we're going to knit the next stitch. So there's 1 knit stitch, and then we're going to knit the 2 stitches off the cable needle. 1 and 2. And then we purl 2, 1 and 2. And here we are in our chart. So we've gotten here, purl, purl. And now we're skipping over those gray stitches. We're just pretending that they're not even stitches. We're skipping over the gray boxes, pretending they don't exist. And then the next stitch you see here is a knit 2 together. So again, we're going to just, you can kind of push those 2 stitches next to each other. You're just going to knit them as though they were 1 stitch. Just like that. And then knit the next 2 stitches, 1, 2. And again, you can see that column that was made up of 4 stitches before now is only made up of 3 stitches. So things are a little bit different there. And then you finish up with the purl 1 and then a knit 1. And then I'm adding my 2 extra stitches that I added to my swatch. Okay, so that brought things in a little bit further. We're shaping the top. You can see this is actually pulling in a little here. So the reason I really wanted to point out that this was 4 stitches wide and now it's 3 stitches wide is because now after that we've got fewer stitches to work with. Let's see, here we are, right here. Fewer stitches to knit across just above, and you can see above there, that is why this is a 2x1 left cable. It used to be a 2x2, but now it's a 2x1, okay? We already know how to do that. We've already learned that over here. Here it is again, but the reason it's like that now is because we're working it across just only 3 stitches, okay? So that's a little different. Same thing over here, it's just, you know, a right-leaning cable, but it's exactly the same thing, okay? And then you'll see again on the following round, we're doing those knit 2 togethers again, ignoring those gray boxes, knitting the knits and purling the purls in here, and then, you know, you've got a couple more rows. Make sure you're doing the following the correct, you know, Irish moss, double moss, whatever you want to call it here for the next couple of rounds. And then you've got some purl 2 togethers, which we already know how to do up here. So basically you're just, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and you already know how to do all these stitches. And towards the end, you're going to just basically stop the cabling and do a bunch of knit 2 togethers like every other round to just kind of close up the very top of your beanie. And then you've got a few loops left over. You take your yarn needle, run it through those loops, pull it tight, close the hole in the top of the hat, and weave in your ends. And you're almost done. But I do want to say, I want to talk a little bit. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything here. Okay. Oh, I do have a question. Helen Henry, on your flat piece you're using as the sample, how do you change the pattern to change from in the round to flat? That's a really good question. I'm glad that you asked that, because if you want to make a gauge swatch for this hat, which I recommend, I'm not very good about swatching things, but I do recommend, because it is a lot of stitching and you don't want to find out later your hat's going to be too big. I would recommend just working this up to switch it back and forth to go to work flat as opposed to in the round. If you just take a look at your chart, this will make things a little bit simpler. Otherwise, if you're reading the directions, you're going to switch the knits and the purls around. So all of your right side rows are still going to remain the same. Those are the rows that you're working those cable crossings. So that's simple. You can just work them as written. But all of your wrongs, or all of your even numbered rows, the even numbered rows here, once you get into the cabling, those are the rows that where you're knitting the knits and purling the purls. However, you're just going to be turning your work, and as you look at them, you're still going to be knitting the knits and purling the purls, but it's going to be, okay, how do I explain this? Let's say, for example, you're working row number 12. Normally, we're working from right to left. So this would be a knit stitch, purl, knit, 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 purl, 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 whatever, right? So we've got that all down. But if you're working it from the wrong side, you're going to be working in this direction. What's showing up here in the chart as a knit, it's only a knit from the right side of your work. But if you look at a knit from the wrong side, it's a purl, right? So you'll be working a purl, then a knit, then purl, 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 then knit, 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 knit. Okay, so if you're looking at the chart, you're just going to reverse what you do when you see a line. It's no longer on the reverse side when you're working the wrong side rows. A line is going to count as a purl, a dot is going to count as a knit. If you're reading the directions for those rounds, you're just going to be doing the opposite thing. So if it says, purl 1, knit 1, you're going to knit 1, then purl 1. You're just doing the opposite. I hope that makes sense. So that would be a great way to practice, if you just do one little section of the chart. You don't even have to, if you don't want to do, if you want to make your gauge swatch and you just want to kind of work up a chunk of it, you could just do like a couple of rows. You can start it out here at like round number 8 or something and work those back and forth, and then start working, back and forth, through this section. Just remember to reverse you're still knitting the knits and purling the purls as you see them, but when you're working a wrong side row, you're going to be, if you're reading the directions, you got to switch around the knits and the purls. I hope that makes sense. Okay. That was a very good question, though. I'm glad that you asked that. Okay. Oh, Janet says the Donegal woolen yarn is so beautiful. It is so beautiful. It has all these little colors in it, and it's very rustic, and it just has, I mean, it just is, I don't know. I just really love this yarn. I do want to mention that I highly, highly recommend you block this hat, especially if you use this yarn, because as you're working with it, you might feel like it's a little stiff. Like you can probably even tell maybe by looking at these samples. This darker one here has not been blocked yet. I'm still working it up. And this one has been blocked. It makes it, it just softens it up so much. And I don't want to say, because this is not, to me, this is not itchy yarn at all, but it is textured and it does have a sort of rustic feel to it. It's not like buttery, super soft, you know, like yarn that's going to have a ton of drape to it, but it does get more like that when you block it. It does, it just, I don't know, it has a lot more drape and a lot of softness to it. So and it kind of, it just evens out your stitches so nicely. I very highly recommend blocking this. So if you're gonna block your hat, soak it. I put a little bit of soak is the name of it. It's like a wool wash in, and you don't have to wash that out. You just let it soak in there for a couple hours or so, squeeze it out, and then just let it dry. Let's see. Tina is saying, I missed the beginning of class. Yep, you can always watch replays of these things. It doesn't, you know, if you can't make it or you can't be there on time or can't watch it that day, they're always going to be up for you guys to see later, so no problem. Oh, and Kelly's saying that they use a sticky note to keep track of rows on their chart. Great point. Great idea. I have this chart keeper, which for some reason I forgot to use during this live event. But, because, yeah, usually when I'm talking, I forget all kinds of things. But if you put the magnet or a Post-it or something above the row that you're working on, I find that to be the most helpful, because then you can see where you've already been. You can see how it relates to where you've already been. You don't really need to know what's coming next, but you do need to know what came before, right? So it really seemed, I like to leave Post-its, or if I don't have a Post-it, I will even just take a piece of paper, you know, and fold it to make it a little stiffer and lay it on top so I can't see what's coming next. And then I will move that up as I go, as I complete each round. That really does seem to help a lot, especially with, I mean, this is a very large chart. There's a lot of rounds here to keep track of, so that will really be very useful. Okay, let me see. When I made this hat, I noticed the written direction in row 47 doesn't match the chart. Okay, we had another question about row 47 at the beginning. Okay, the cables on the 3 stitches need to be changed from a 2 by 2 to 2 to 1. Okay, thank you for putting that in there, Kathy. I'm sorry I didn't catch that for you guys, but I'm so glad that you guys did. That's amazing. I'm so glad that we could have this live event. So you guys can make that correction from what Kathy's saying. That probably, I'm guessing that's just the only problem there. But I will go through the pattern later, and I will send my corrections in, so we will get this updated for in the future. But yes, it should be correct on the chart. Like I said before, it's the instruction, the written instructions that are incorrect. The chart is correct. Okay. Oh, and Lucia says that they love Karen Feller as well. Awesome. And happy St. Patrick's Day. Great. Okay. Oh, thank you, Cheryl, for the compliment about my cowl, and thank you very much. Oh, and you're working on yours. Awesome. Great. Okay. Yes. All right. I think I answered everything. I'm so glad you guys were here, and that was very helpful. Thank you for pointing out the errors. I am very glad that you did that. Yeah. So now we can get all that corrected. I'm glad that you guys are here. There is one more live event tomorrow that Emily Steffen is going to be teaching, a rainbow quilt block that looks super adorable. So if you guys are interested in that, you should check it out. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Bye, everybody.